Today's the deadline for the Illinois Senate to pass legislation out of the Senate to kick it over to the House. Last week was the House deadline for House bills to pass out of that chamber over to the Senate. And you remember the shenanigans Republicans called out on the House floor late Friday, where they used a policy procedure to highlight how there were Democrats not voting their own switches and having staff do that. So they ended up passing like more than 400 bills last week out of the Illinois House. What do they got going on in the Illinois Senate? Wednesday, they passed 5 bills, 89 bills the next day, 82 bills on Thursday. So altogether, 172 bills they've passed so far this week out of the Illinois Senate. How many more are they going to pass today? They're back in session at 9 o'clock this morning. So we'll watch that and see what happens. But they've passed a whole bunch of stuff. One would lift the moratorium on nuclear power in Illinois, which may help the power grid if indeed that sends a signal to, we already have a bunch of nuke plants in Illinois. I think we're a state that has like the most. But regardless, they passed that out of the Illinois Senate, and that's actually a Republican measure to help alleviate some of the burden on the state's energy grid, especially as the governor is looking to close coal-fired power plants. So you had that advance. You had a whole bunch of other bills. Again, 172 some odd bills just in the past 3 days that were passed. What more could they do today as they approach their deadline in the Illinois Senate? We'll be watching that. A whole host of things could be flying all over the place. But one bill yesterday was debated, and I was just listening in the background while they're passing all this legislation, and I hear local state senator Steve McClure. He's raising his voice against a bill that deals with criminal justice. And then you have Democratic State Senator Robert Peters, who is the sponsor of this piece of legislation, responding back. And here's a little bit how that back and forth went, as I had to edit this clip because, yes, it does have an expletive.
And now we're saying if you commit a residential burglary and you've got a problem with alcohol or cannabis and you qualify for treatment as part of the task probation for alcohol or cannabis, the judge, the probation services department, cannot stop you from using cannabis or alcohol. Why would we want to stop people from being rehabilitated? We already have one of the highest recidivism rates in the entire nation. We want to put people on the right path. This will not allow judges and probation officers to help put people on the right path. It's a bad bill. I urge a no vote.
Seeing no further discussion, Senator Peters to close.
I'll keep it relatively brief. I'm going to use a little example. I grew up with an alcoholic mom who popped pills on a regular basis and pushed my sister down a flight of stairs, and excuse my language, but I apologize. Let me just say, pushed my sister down a flight of stairs and had an alcohol addiction, and if she were to have to go to prison for that, this bill would still mean that she could get tested for being an alcoholic, meaning if it had anything to pertain to the crime, again, she would be able to get tested. The very idea that this does not allow that seems to be a form of scare tactics to try to scare people off the bill. It's a good bill. It will still allow testing. I ask for an aye vote, and I apologize for my foul mouth.
Your foul mouth. I don't hear a lot of foul language on the House floor or the Senate floor for that matter, but that was a bomb that he dropped there.
I'm going to use a little example. I grew up with an alcoholic mom who popped pills on a regular basis and pushed my sister down a flight of stairs, and excuse my language, but I would just I apologize. Let me just say.
Jeez. I'm sorry that he had to deal with that in his family, and that's a horrible situation to even try to convey to somebody privately, let alone on the Senate floor. But woof, that was quite the.
I'm going to use a little example. I grew up with an alcoholic mom who popped pills on a regular basis and pushed my sister down a flight of stairs, and excuse my language, but I would just I apologize.
He definitely got people's attention. There's no question about it. So that was another bill that ultimately passed. Again, 172 bills. You're going to have a whole slew of more bills passed in the next 12 hours or so. Or maybe the Senate, they come in and they pass some priority bills, and then they they go ahead and move on and then head off for 2 weeks. They're going to be off for spring break for 2 weeks. Now, in that time, that's when I'm going to go through and kind of pick apart some of the 400 bills the House passed and some of the 100 and whoever knows how many bills the Senate passes, because they're going to kick them back to the opposite chambers. And then you'll start seeing some of these bills pass on final passage and a more clear picture of what exactly the legislature's priorities are heading into mid-May when they adjourn. None of this has been the budget. None of this has been the budget, and I don't know how much of this either has been from the issue of looking at how to lower taxes in the state of Illinois, and that was something that Republican state senators, they urged for an effort to try to lower taxes in Illinois. And they held a news conference yesterday to discuss that, and ultimately they're looking for a variety of different tax breaks, including rebates for energy customers. And they had this laid out with a package of 4 different measures. Here is State Representative Erica Harris talking a bit about what they're looking for when it comes to helping rebates for Ameren customers.
Taxes on groceries are
That's
set
not
to
Erica
resume.
Harris. That's Don DeWitt. Here's Erica Harris from Glen Carbon.
If successful, my legislation would release funds to provide each Ameren customer household with around $170 in credits on their bills.
So the bill would ultimately be a $200 million appropriation to allow for these tax credits. Don DeWitt, he's looking to make the freeze on grocery taxes and pharmaceutical taxes permanent, and he says that'll provide some relief.
Taxes on groceries are set to resume on July 1st, at which point consumers will begin paying state sales tax once again on top of the roughly 10% or more of inflationary increases that they're already paying for groceries.
So we haven't seen those measures advance, nor have we seen the budget advance. That'll likely come in the final few days of the scheduled session, which is mid-May. So we'll be watching all of that closely here with Springfield's Morning News on WMAY. A bit of a legislative roundup.